That's 87878. Or visit moneyhotline.co.uk.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Ask Boris. Mayor of London Boris Johnson takes your calls with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. This is Ask Boris on LBC.
Folks, good morning. This is Boris Johnson here, Mayor of London, on Ask Boris on LBC. This is your chance to talk about anything that you wish to raise, either about London or indeed anything else, because our subjects are more and more widespread these days. We go first to Andy in Dartford. Andy in Dartford, are you there?
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
Good. One question, a quick question. If David Cameron offered you the chance of becoming Prime Minister, would you take it, and what changes would you make?
What changes would I make? I think I'd insist that I've got on with my job as Mayor of London. That's what I'd do.
Oh, now don't.
Now, come on.
The question, Mr. Mayor.
I think that
yesterday it was broadcast on television.
Wait, let me answer Andy in Dartford before you push in, Nick. And you're perfectly entitled. You can come in a minute.
That's very kind of you.
Andy in Dartford is asking me what changes I'd make if I were Prime Minister. Well, my job, Andy, is Mayor of London, and I've got to get on and make more changes in London. And I've got more than a year to serve as in that office. It's a huge privilege. It's an incredibly difficult job, but it's going outstandingly well for London. And where today Mike Brown is announcing huge progress on the tube, reductions in delays, increases in efficiency, carrying more people than ever before.
How is it going to do that?
This week, by putting in the signalling that we've
But how is it going to carry more people than ever before?
By doing what we've done on things like the Victoria line, where we're up to 34 trains an hour now. So you've got basically more than one every 2 minutes, and that massively increases your capacity. So if you put the signalling in, you pay, and people say, well, why are we paying all this stuff in fares? Well, that is the answer. It enables us to improve the network. So, Andy, yes, I've got to get on and do a huge job for another whatever it is, 15 months or so.
Yes.
And I intend to do that.
Right.
12 months, 13 months.
Now let's come back to the meat of what happened last night, with the Prime Minister saying that he would not seek a third term before he's even won a second. How wise was he to say that?
By the way, before I come to that, I think I forgot to tell everybody, if they want to ask questions, I don't want to dodge this question. If they want to ask questions, dial 0345. Shush, calm down. Dial 0345. Yes, I'm in charge of this show, and I just want people who might not have got this number, 0345 6060 973, to get through to me or Nick. Now, Nick, what did you say? What did you say again?
I'd like you to comment on the wisdom or lack thereof, with the Prime Minister saying he'd seek a third term.
Come on.
Before he's even won a second. You've now had time to consider your answer fully. Before he's got a second term.
I think what David Cameron is saying is entirely, banal and obvious. And David has already been leader of the Conservative Party. Dave has been leader of the Conservative Party for 10 years, and he's done an outstanding job. What he's saying now is that he wants to serve through till 2020, and that is frankly what we need him to do. The country needs it. We need to get on with entrenching an economic recovery that is very strong, but not totally secure.
Mr. Mayor,
it would be endangered by a Labour government.
Right.
And 5 more years is what this country needs. That is what the Prime Minister is offering to serve. And I think that's fantastic. And frankly, I'm not entirely certain I see what the story is. He was asked a straight question: Are you going to try and run a third term like Mrs. Thatcher or Tony Blair or whoever? And he said no, because he thinks that 10 years at the top of British politics is an incredibly long time.
Yet.
And, well, he was...
It's rather presumptive, isn't it?
No, it's not at all. I think that bit I don't understand at all this stuff about how it's taking people... On the contrary, what he's talking about, he was asked a question about a third term. He is fighting flat out, as we all are, to win a second term. That is absolutely vital. And we have a long-term economic plan for the economy, for the country, and it's only by getting David Cameron back into government that we'll deliver it. So to say he's arrogant or presumptuous and to rule out a third term seems to be totally bizarre. I mean, he's being, I think, rather humble and rather straightforward and telling it like it is.
Is he right when he says that all prime ministers go mad?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean,
well, you must have a view.
But I think what he's saying is that he doesn't intend to do
all
that.
prime ministers go mad?
No, I don't think so necessarily. I think I don't think that the prime minister is mad. I think he's showing eminent sanity and reasonableness.
No, but he said that they all go mad eventually.
And by the way, what is so extraordinary about this? Saying you're not going to serve another. I think both my illustrious Labour predecessor and myself have been very clear with Electorate of London we weren't going to serve more than one more term. This is no big deal. This is no big deal. Shall we go? Shall we go to?
For now, yes.
Well, if you can come back if you like. By the way, where's my? Is that my coffee over there?
No, I didn't know you knew.
Can we get them?
How do you take your
Keith
coffee?
in Stoke Newington.
No, that's mine. You can drink it if you want to.
Before we cut the coffee, let's go to Keith in Stoke Newington, please.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, good morning, gents. The question is, on the basis that Henry VIII separated church and state 500 years ago, and by the introduction of Sharia law, you wiped out 500 years of this development of English-speaking people, and the instance of young Muslim people running off to IS, etc., etc. What do you think? How can you protect London and people from this Islamic inroads into our city?
Well, I'm totally against having any type of Sharia system at all, Keith, and or Sharia system running in parallel with UK justice. That is unacceptable to me.
Even in civil courts?
Absolutely not. We have a system that everybody must be equal under the law, and everybody must obey the same law, and that is absolutely cast. I take grave exception to some of the support that I see sometimes, and from clerics in the Church of England, Keith, who come out in favour of this, I've noticed, have said, we should be a little bit indulgent of this. And I think, actually, you speak about Henry VIII, but it's an interesting fact that we have some clerical fossils still in our legislature. Don't forget, we have bishops sitting by right in the upper house. And you may want to reflect on that, Keith. The separation of church and state is not perhaps as thoroughgoing in this country as you might like to think.
Oh, yeah, well, that's the point. But the reason that happened was because, like Islam, Catholicism was politically was a political control of the law, wasn't it? So the idea of bringing the bishops in was Protestant was to stop the political control and freedom of thought, basically, which is why we have Christians in the church, unfortunately. Well, I don't know whether it's a good idea or not.
Well, you can't really stop having Christians in the church. I mean, that's where you'd expect to find them, just as you expect, generally speaking, to find Russians in Russia or bears in woods and so on. But
So
look, I think the point is, Keith, I think you're making a really sound point, which is that the idea of a parallel system of law, a parallel judicature, a people making the laws according to a different system is absolutely unacceptable. It's alien to our traditions. I won't have it in London, and I'm worried sometimes by the faint bat squeaks of support that I hear for that idea, even from clerics in the Church of England.
So even civil cases, you don't want Sharia law?
No, I don't.
So the Beth Din will have to go as well?
Yes, I absolutely. Sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. Sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander.
What's wrong with Jewish people getting their marriages dissolved through the Beth Din?
Well, look, because they can do that, but it's got to be done in parallel with. It's got to be done.
So we can have
simultaneously.
the Beth Din. You just said it had to go.
It's got to be done in accordance.
Why can't a Muslim woman have her divorce finalised through a Sharia civil case?
It cannot substitute for UK civil proceedings.
Why can't a Muslim?
You can just as you can consecrate a union in church as well as in a civil way. So you've got to make sure that it doesn't.
Why can't a
substitute
Muslim couple have their divorce handled in a Sharia court?
They can, but they
you
cannot.
Just said we couldn't have it. I specifically asked.
But they cannot replace the civil proceedings. So whatever happens, if they want to have some ceremonial proceeding according to religious ritual or whatever, that is fine. But it's got the actual implementation of the law has got to be done in British courts and according to British law, agreed by Parliament.
All right.
Agreed by Parliament. That is where the law emanates from. The law emanates in the end from the people voting MPs who enact the statutes that we all obey, and that gives this country a vital equality.
All right, have a sip of coffee as I just get into the next.
Can we get a mic?
I thought you'd like some coffee. Let's ask Mike to hold 1 second. You have a sip of coffee, because I'm just going to get you to comment on this. You and I have talked quite a lot about the Emirates airline. Why was it closed for a week?
Well, it's closed at the moment because I think it's undergoing regular maintenance, but I'm delighted, as ever, that you choose to bat on this wicket that is so completely unfavourable.
Between July 2012 and December 2014, 354 closures.
Yeah, they're very brief closures caused.
Well, a closure is a closure.
Very brief closures caused by high winds, which are an atmospheric phenomenon that you'd expect in that part of London, where the wind comes down the river, and actually it runs the overwhelming majority of the
passaging numbers have dropped significantly since 2012. This year averaging 4,285 per day.
Passenger numbers are rising.
No, they're falling to 4,285 per day.
The Emirates airline, and I want to congratulate Danny Price and all the team who run the Emirates airline, because they are doing an outstanding job. Do you know, Nick, it has now taken 5 million passengers. There are people travelling it throughout the day for work, for pleasure, and it's a fantastic. You've enjoyed it.
Yes, there's a bit of fun. There's a bit of a hoot.
It's absolutely no, it's not. It's
how
not.
Can you possibly commute if the damn thing's closed?
It is functioning the vast majority of the time. Of course, there are occasional closures. There are occasional closures because of high winds. That you're talking about very short periods of time when we have high winds.
It's closed for a week.
That's for maintenance. Okay?
Well, there's high winds, it's maintenance, the van broke down. There's so many reasons why the damn thing keeps closing.
Well, listen, I'm delighted that
why are we maintaining something that's never used?
This is the only piece of transport. It's used more. You're talking such nonsense, and you're so negative, and you're so miserable. You remind me of some sort of lefty these days. What's gone wrong with you? It's the most brilliant.
That's the worst insult.
It's the most brilliant thing. Actually, it's the
So when you signed off on it, we knew it would be closed this often.
The Emirates. It's barely ever closed. It's only
354
but for very short periods of time. People love this
closed
thing.
for a week.
Oh, well, listen, I'm delighted that you feel such a desire to get up on it the whole time, and you're quite right. And lots of people do. It's carried 5 million people. It's carrying more and more people. And by the way, before we go to Mike and Crawley, since you raised this thing, I'm just going to remind you that it's the only piece of transport infrastructure in this city that actually already covers its revenue costs. It's a money machine.
That's due to the sponsorship.
No, you're wrong. It's because I talked about revenue costs.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Revenue costs. So it's.
Well, that's because of the high cost. How much is it?
No, it's
30 quid, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Should we get a minicab?
You're ridiculous.
Right, shall we move?
Ridiculous. It's unbelievably
How much is
good
it,
value.
crossing?
It's less than a fiver. I can't remember what the exact price is.
How much is a crossing?
We'll find out for you.
So you don't know. So it's a marvellous value. You have no idea how much it is.
It's marvellous value.
How much is it?
Well, we'll find the number for you later on. We'll find the number for you later on.
We'll find the number.
Come on, we'll bring it to you. Well, so we can advertise the Emirates airline again.
We go to another caller now.
But in spite of, I think it's under a fiver as far as I can remember. We're going, and it depends if you have Oyster card. It depends if you have Oyster or not.
It's £3.20 if you have an Oyster card.
Is that right?
£3.20 if you have an Oyster card.
There you go. £3.20 if you have an Oyster card. No wonder this is one of the most successful bits of transport infrastructure in the history of this city. I think look, I'm glad that you're clamouring for it to remain open more often. But it is doing well. Can we go to Mike and Crawley, please? Mike.
Yes, good morning, Nick. Good morning, Mr. Johnson.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My question relates to equality before the law.
Yes.
Concerning recent allegations of sexual impropriety, we've seen many cases of people in the fields of media and entertainment being named when initially under investigation on the basis that possibly more witnesses would come forward. So why is it that politicians under similar investigation for alleged offences have not been identified? And would you agree with me that this anomaly seems to be the classic case of some animals being more equal than others, as George Orwell would have so succinctly put it?
Well, thanks, Mike. I'm not certain that is entirely the case, in the sense that I can think of quite a few politicians who've been named either posthumously or while they were alive, when actually nothing had been proved against them at all. I think of Alistair McAlpine, who was actually driven to an early grave by false allegations against him that were widely bruited and by not least on the BBC, as far as I can remember, Mike. So and you know, I'm not certain that's entirely true. I think there is a genuine problem, which is that there is a need on the part of the police to try to make sure that they get the maximum possible evidence against an individual when they have reason to suspect a crime has been committed. And so sometimes, for the sake of the prosecution, for the sake of justice, they will put names out there, and that is what you have seen both for journalists and celebrities, and also for politicians. So unfortunately, it may sometimes turn out that the allegations are completely unfounded, in which case people go through an awful lot of misery for no purpose.
Mike?
Yeah, my response to that would be, I take your point with regard to certain aspects of it, but we recently saw one famous entertainer where was under investigation with helicopters in the air, and the BBC sat outside. But routinely, when I hear about politicians, I can hear about people who can't be named for legal reasons or whatever. And this is discounting, of course, the obvious danger of, in effect, substituting a hue and cry for witnesses rather than investigation and putting people before the court by the proper method.
But I'm not quite certain what you're saying here, Mike. Are you actually calling for these politicians to be named, or are you saying that nobody should be named?
Well, what I'm saying is that the current system that we have is where people are being named, and if people are being named, then they should be equally named.
Well, the point I'm making to you is that as far as I can make out from the stories I've read, quite a lot of politicians have been named. Poor Leon Britton, I don't believe for a minute was involved in anything like this. I really don't. I think it sounds like total nonsense to me. I remember he was a commissioner in Brussels when I was a reporter there. It strikes me as absolutely incredible that the allegations against him could be true. But his name's out there, being dragged through it. I haven't seen a shred of evidence to support it. Frankly, I've mentioned Alistair.
So that's unfair the way it's been introduced.
Look,
in death.
That's my instinct. And maybe the police will produce something extraordinary and incriminating, but I really don't see it. I think, Mike, it's very difficult. I think the issue is if you're trying to frame a prosecution, if you're trying to get the evidence that you need, then sometimes you will want to allow other potential victims to come forward, and that's what you've seen in the cases of Savile and others, as they're called, and names have been put out there in order to encourage people to have the confidence to come forward. But clearly, in some cases, Mike, it will have a devastating effect on those who are innocent. So it is a very, very difficult balance. Can we go to Aldi in Belgravia?
Thanks, Mike. Yes, we will. Okay, go ahead, Aldi. Hi.
Yes, very good morning.
Good morning.
My first question, I have two questions for to Boris Johnson.
Yes.
First is, please, your views on mansion tax to save the NHS, which I do not agree. And my second question is, I live in this country for more than 20 years. I hold an Italian passport.
How many years?
More than 20.
Yeah.
For more than 20 years. I hold an Italian passport. I would love to vote for Prime Minister. Why can't I?
Va bene. Well, you like to do what?
I would like to vote for Prime Minister.
Yeah, I'm sure you. Who
would you want to vote for?
You need to. Well, Aldi, you need to get a UK passport, which you're probably entitled after you've been here for quite a long time, and paid your council taxes and not been in trouble with the law and paid your congestion charge and all that sort of thing. I'm sure that people do naturalise.
You can be dual national anyway.
Naturalise after. Yes, definitely. There's no reason at all, Aldi, why you shouldn't be able to do that. But listen, John, turning to your question about the tax on family homes, such as yours, Aldi. There's no question at all. Yes. This is a tax on London. This is an attack on London and the South East, where the overwhelming majority of such homes are to be found. There will be many people, and I don't know whether you're one of them, who are living through no fault of their own in a home that has massively inflated in value through simple operation of external market forces, and they are suddenly going to be clobbered, absolutely clobbered, with an annual tax of sometimes tens of thousands of pounds out of their income, which they simply can't afford to pay. And it is no wonder, Aldi, actually, that all the Labour candidates for Mayor of London, so Tessa Jowell and Margaret Hodge and David Lammy, they all came out strongly against this mansion tax because they know it's basically unfair, it's unjust, and by the way, it won't do anything to help people in the London housing market. Quite the reverse. So you're seeing a great deal of uncertainty about international investment in London, which is actually something that enables us to build new homes.
What will you do to stop it?
Well, I think the most effective way to stop an imposition of a new tax on family homes in London and the South East is not to have Ed Miliband in Downing Street. That's the best answer.
But all that's going to be taxed is the amount of over £1 million. So if someone's home is worth £1.25 million, it's the £250,000 that is going to be taxed. What is the problem with that? One, as Nick Clegg would say, well, those with the broader shoulders bearing some of the pay.
Yes, but there are many people. It's because it's a tax on income, and many people simply don't have the income to pay 2% of £250,000.
Well, but then they don't have to pay it until the house is sold. Then it's not until it is realised. They've said that as well, haven't they? An elderly couple living in Twickenham, they've got no problems, and as and when the house has to be sold, they just store it up.
Well, and so
what's the problem with that?
Well, but because that will be inevitably be taken off the value of their home when they come to sell it. And
I mean, I happen to agree with you, but that's what Nick Clegg would say. House worth 2.5 million, right? Because I believe it's 2 million they're bringing in. Actually, my apologies. So we're only taxing the 500,000. Right. If it is someone's very fixed income, just living on their savings, don't worry, we don't need it. You will obviously tick it up, the clock will tick, but eventually you'll have to pay for the house.
So you only pay this you only pay this when you sell the house?
When they die. Yeah.
Does that apply to everybody?
No, if they can't afford if they've got fixed income and they can't pay.
Well, how do you tell them that's?
But it's not my idea. It's what Nick Clegg's told me. Sitting in that seat, I'm not supporting it. I'm putting it.
It's a load of absolute cobblers. It would be a nightmare. It would be a nightmare.
It's an official expression.
It would be a nightmare for people on fixed incomes who would suddenly find themselves hit with this unexpected tax just because they're sitting in a home that has that is in a neighbourhood where the values have gone up.
You get angry with me. I'm only putting the other line forward.
Well, and I do think you should get angry about it. I'm not angry. I thought you were angry, and you should be angry about it because it's an unjust attack on London. And by the way, it will. I think it's very striking how Tessa and all the other Labour candidates have denounced it. I think they're right to denounce it, and I hope that Ed Miliband will drop it. Right. Can we go to David in Enfield, please?
David, go ahead.
Good morning, Boris.
Good morning,
Good morning, Boris. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Boris, in the forthcoming election, which of these two should the voters be more concerned about? Ed Miliband's difficulty in eating a bacon sandwich, or your party chairman, Greg Shapps, telling porky pies on his recent LBC interview concerning his second job when he was an MP?
Well, just on Ed Miliband, I think the problem with Ed Miliband is his sandwich eating or anything like that. I don't think that's the issue at all. I think the problem with Ed Miliband and the Labour Party is basically that they want to take this country back to the 1970s, and they want to festoon British business with regulation. They think they have an overt admiration for the way things are done in France, where they have unemployment now running at about 12%. You've got huge numbers of talented French people fleeing France at the moment because it's a crazed socialist 1970s version of the European economy, and that is the problem with Ed, in my view. Now on Grant Shapps, I think Grant has done a terrific job as a party chairman. I think he's one of the best party chairmen I can remember of the Conservative Party in modern times. And
you can't remember his name.
And I think that the whole issue of his interests, his private sector interests that he had, I think this is really being flammed up by people who helped.
Mr. Mayor, he deliberately
who hate the wealth creating sector, who hate the idea that somebody could actually have an interest in private business as well. And that's what
he was asked whether he had continued another job, and he categorically told my LBC colleague Sheila Fogarty he hadn't once he'd become an MP, and he had. I'll be as palatable. He misled us.
Well, hang on, as charitable. You are palatable. But
charitable.
how long did he continue? It was a complete storm in a teacup.
You can't be a little bit pregnant.
How long? How long?
Either you were working or
how
you weren't.
long was it?
What difference?
I'm asking you the question.
So a politician, as long as it was only a couple of months.
Because I think
you're the chairman of the Conservative. You're asked a pretty fundamental question.
Well,
it's either yes or no. It's not a.
There was nothing. Look, I think it was
12 months, by the way.
For starters, as far as I can understand the situation, he was doing. There was absolutely no impropriety involved. He was perfectly entitled to do what he was doing.
He either lied or forgot.
Well,
it's quite important.
I'm sure it's the second. It doesn't sound to me as though if there was an overlap, it wasn't very long.
Right.
And basically, people are bashing this guy because he was so enterprising as to set up his own business.
No, that's not the problem at all.
Published lots of interesting material about how to get rich or something.
That's the problem.
Why shouldn't he? He's
not at all. As long as you say, I don't care if he's got 15 jobs. I don't care if he's got as many jobs as Miliband has kitchens. I don't care. Just be honest about it.
Well, I think he's clear. If he did underestimate the time of the overlap or whatever it was, he's supposed to have got what he's supposed to have gone wrong. Got wrong. Then I think he's already cleared it up. And
he used a strange expression for that LBC interview. We'll find it. I can't remember. We move to another.
Do you want the cable car fares? By the way, here we go. Child 230, 460 return, discounted Oyster cashless, adult 340. Child 170. There you go. Sorry. There you go.
Lovely. Well done. Thank you.
Just to clear that up. And that is why the Emirates airline continues to attract record numbers. Now on 5 million, and the only piece of transport, as I say.
Right.
Can we go to Stephen Kingston?
Well, Stephen Kingston seems to have fallen off the line. I do apologise, but I tell you, let's do some of the emails, texts, and tweets that are coming in. Jakey asks, will the lights in City Hall be switched off between 8:30 and 9:30 this Saturday night as part of Earth Hour?
Well, the lights, Jakey, in City Hall, I can tell you, switch off automatically anyway, because we have a special system that means that whenever there's no motion in the building, they tend to go off. So if 8:30 p.m. you're talking about,
that's when I believe Earth Hour.
Well, most people, alas, have probably gone off to do some other work elsewhere in London rather than being at City Hall. I certainly generally have left by 8:30 unless I'm making
on a Saturday.
It's on Saturday, generally.
Yeah.
So, Jakey, most of the lights will go off. In fact, I can tell you something. If you sit in my office late at night, as I often do, meditating great thoughts for London and how to bring crime down, all the rest of it, and improve transport, all the stuff I'm thinking about. And what happens if I'm motionless for too long? The lights go off anyway, and I have to jump up and down and wave my arms to bring them back on. And so we have a very, very environmentally sensitive system already in City Hall, and I'm sure that will be in operation. Can we go to Martin in Blackheath?
Martin, stand by. Go ahead, Martin.
Hello, morning, Boris. Morning, Nick.
Hello.
What I'd like to speak to you about, Boris, as a motorist, is the horrendous traffic jams we're getting in London.
Yeah.
Yesterday morning, you've got the bomb in Bermondsey. I spent 2 hours on a 7-minute journey.
I'm very sorry.
But why cannot you get some sort of army of traffic wardens, not ticket dispensers, traffic wardens to go to emergency hotspots? I'm going over Blackfriars Bridge in half hour. There's some roadworks there.
Yeah.
It's going to take me 45 minutes instead of 3 minutes. So why can't you have a normal old-fashioned traffic warden stuck there directing the traffic in emergencies?
Well, we do sometimes, Martin, obviously, and we do deploy large numbers of officers on the streets now and trying to keep the traffic moving, and that's obviously
how big is this bomb?
A priority. It is, as far as I know, it's about 250 kilos.
What are you doing it in kilos for?
Well, that was the figure I was given as
why do you have it in kilos?
Well, that was the figure I was given. Well, let's go and weigh this.
What's that mean? Half a ton? I don't know.
It's a quarter of a ton, isn't it?
It's a quarter of a ton. It's a quarter of a ton bomb.
A quarter of a metric ton, yes.
Right, okay, fine. Why kilos? Next thing will be kilometres.
All right.
Last time I looked, it was miles.
All right. Anyway, it's quarter of a metric ton, and I don't know, a quarter of an imperial ton, but that's what it.
What about traffic wardens?
It weighs about as much as you do, probably.
It cannot be that heavy. They'd never have got it off the ground in Berlin.
If people could envisage,
it would never ever have flown.
If people could envisage a Nazi munition as heavy as Mr. Ferrari, that's what we're talking about.
Why can't we have traffic wardens on occasions such as these?
we can, and I'm sure we do. On the issue of the bomb in Bermondsey, it is as I've just been saying, it's a huge bomb. We can't take any risk with the thing. It's about twice your weight, basically. It's 2 Ferraris. It's a 2 Ferrari bomb. It's a 2 Ferrari bomb, and it is going to be disinterred. And as I understand it, we are taking it off to Kent to
blow it up, presumably.
Yeah,
right. Okay.
I apologise to Martin and listen, Martin. I mean, seriously, on traffic and where we are with that, there is no question that London is now going through a really vigorous, sustained economic recovery, which is driving huge traffic growth. We are going to need this city in the next 20 years. Nick, is going to need major investment in the roads, and one of the things that I've got the Chancellor to focus on in the long-term economic plan for London is, and one of the reasons we need a long-term economic plan. We need David Cameron at the helm for another 5 years. Is so that we can get traffic moving smoothly, and that is in the end going to mean investment in the road network, investment also in tunnelization. And this is something that I've raised with you before, but it has got to be put on the agenda of London. We've got to improve our mass transit, we've got to improve our rail, we've got to improve our tubes, we've massively got to expand the tube in South London, and we are improve the overground. TfL's going to do all that, but until we bite the bullet and do what they failed to do in the 1960s and build a proper inner orbital road network, we won't begin to address this problem. So
I'm glad you mentioned the 5 years of David Cameron, because when you heard last night that at the end of those 5 years he's off ski and it's either you, George Osborne, or Theresa May, how did you react?
By saying, how did you feel? He's now named you as a possible successor. Well, as I said last night, the good news is,
we've had all of that. How did you feel about it? We had all of that about 25 minutes ago.
I've barely begun.
But I know what you're going to say.
Well, that's because this of all the subjects in the world, this is the one that sends me into the deepest coma of tedium.
Right. How did you feel? It's now official that you're a contender to lead the Conservative Party. It's come from the man's mouth. How did you feel?
It is a...
You're actually going to dodge the question, Mr. Mayor.
Look, the good news is...
No mind all that. How did you feel?
How did I feel about what? About the fact that David Cameron...
named alongside your colleagues George Osborne and Theresa May, Boris Johnson.
Well, to be fair to Dave, this is not the first time that people have said this. In fact, you and I have had conversations.
Never mind me. He's the Prime Minister and he's the leader of the Conservative Party, and he's now naming you. So for about the 4th time we come round the bay, how did you feel about it?
I felt very pleased that the Prime Minister was going to go on for 5 years.
No. And how did you feel about your name
the subject of
being put alongside Theresa May and George Osborne?
Well, I
don't know.
By the way, there are many candidates out there, and I'm sure that the Prime Minister, for the sake of brevity, and I think he was.
So how did you feel being included in the triumvirate?
Look, the issue is that...
Why weren't you on, sir?
Because I basically didn't feel very much, if you want to know the truth, because this is something that's been raised many times.
Heck of a shot, though, isn't it? You're sitting there having whatever you are, eating your spaghetti, whatever you might be doing. I
don't think the Prime Minister has actually said anything new.
But he's named you.
Well, I don't want to sound.
Now, do you want it? Now, to move to the important thing, do you want it? Do you want to be leader of the Conservative Party?
Conceited about this, but I think he has said stuff like that before.
I don't think it's candid as that.
And I think the.
So, do you want to be leader of the Conservative Party?
Look, this is a subject, as I say, on which I am.
Well, of the three of them, who would you support?
The subject that fills me with the greatest tedium.
Who would you vote
for? That is what they call a hypothetical question, because there is no vacancy. And nor will there be. We
know there is. There's one on its way.
Nor will there be a vacancy for 5 years, which is an incredibly long time.
But you will want it in 5 years.
We won't. We're talking about 2020.
Yeah, sure.
2020.
Well, you're planning London for 2050, so don't worry too much about that. We've seen your plan.
You
will go for it, won't you?
If you will forgive me,
you will go for it, won't you?
I'm going to focus on the next.
Will you go for it? Yes or no?
I can't possibly answer that because it's a long way off.
So you're ruling yourself out?
It is a long way off.
So you're not ruling yourself out?
As I say, we don't even know. We probably don't even know the identity of the next leader of the Conservative Party. It is some babe unborn. It might be you. Hang
on, we're going to need it in 5 years' time. How can it be an unborn child?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, that is a good point. All right, that's biologically.
Right, this is another part.
That is a good point. That's a good point. All right, well, yeah, okay. Well,
this is another part of the David Cameron interview.
The third term is not something I'm contemplating. Terms are like shredded wheat. 2 are wonderful, 3 might just be too many.
Now, we've talked about the problems that Ed Miliband has in eating a bacon sandwich. On the radio now, I've just got freshly... No, I'm going to see. I'm opening a brand new box of shredded wheat. There's 2. There's 4. There's the bowl.
I want you to, Nick. I want you to have.
Whoa!
I want you to. Go on,
there's the milk.
Go on.
We've got a news break for 2 minutes. How many shredded wheat shall I get you?
I'll eat. Actually, I just had breakfast. I'm full. I don't want.
You can't eat any shredded wheat.
I don't. I'll eat them late. I'll eat them tomorrow morning.
How many will you like? How many can I give you? 2 or 3?
Look, appetizing as they are, I've just had breakfast. Why do I have? What do you mean? Why are you compelling me to eat shredded wheat?
The answer to that question will be after the news here on LBC.
Boris Johnson's told LBC David Cameron was being humble when he announced he wouldn't run for a third term as Prime Minister. Mr Cameron's been accused of being arrogant by making the comments before he's even won a second 5 years in office. Boris Johnson's been defending him on LBC.
To say he's arrogant or presumptuous and to rule out a third term seems to be totally bizarre. I mean, he's being, I think, rather humble and rather straightforward and telling it like it is.
The rate of consumer price index inflation fell to an historic low of 0% in February, down from 0.3% in January. Angelina Jolie's revealed she's had her ovaries and fallopian tubes removed after doctors detected possible signs of cancer. The actress had a double mastectomy in 2013 after finding out she had a gene mutation that increased her risk of developing the disease. A 200-metre exclusion zone is in force this morning in South London, where an unexploded World War II bomb has been found. It was discovered on a building site on Grange Walk in Bermondsey yesterday morning. Road closures are in place nearby. At 9:15, the FTSE was up 9 at 70.46. And LBC weather, cloudy with some rain to start off for London and the southeast. Sunny spells and scattered heavy showers expected later. Highs of 10 degrees. Cloudy across the UK. Occasional showers in northern England. Mainly dry though in Wales and central and southern England. Some rain possible for Scotland and Northern Ireland. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Lisa Aziz.
I'm Chris Golds in the LBC Travel Centre. Because of the unexploded World War II bomb in Bermondsey, Grange Walk still closed along with Grange Road eastbound and Abbey Street westbound. Tower Bridge is back open again, but it's still very busy in the area. Best to avoid if you can. Lots of problems on the M25. There's queues anti-clockwise between junction 3 for the M20 and 2 for the A2 after an accident. Also on the M25, it's slow clockwise towards junction 1B for Dartford. That's because a car's overturned. And also on the M25, queues anti-clockwise between junction 24 for Porter Spa and 23 for South Mims because a lorry's broken down. There's queues on the A40 Westway eastbound after a car was on fire earlier between the Paddington Slip and the Marlborough flyover. All the lanes have now reopened though. On the trains, southeastern trains heading out of London are still delayed by about 20 minutes between Cannon Street and Dartford, all because of a signal failure. Keep your London moving. This is LBC.
LBC Travel.
With GoTo Meeting. Work smarter with a free 30-day trial.
This is Ask Boris on LBC.
Here we go. We're going now to Steve in Kingston. Steve, how are you?
Good morning, chaps.
Morning.
Boris, do you agree with Philip Hammond's assessment that there's no votes in defence? And also, do you think Winston Churchill would have approved of us not spending 2% of our GDP on defence as well?
Well, first of all, I don't think Philip, who I have a very high regard for, and I think is a superb foreign secretary. I don't think Philip Hammond would have said that at all. I think that of course there are votes in defence. Defence is absolutely crucial to our future, and yes, I'm in principle. I'm in favour of the 2% spending, but it's got to be spending, Steve, for a purpose. And what I have said is I want to see a very clear understanding from the armed forces about what they think they can deliver for that 2%. I think there's no point in just, rather like the DFID argument. There's no point in just politicians writing a blank cheque and saying, okay, you can have 0.7% of GDP, or you can have 2% of GDP. We need to understand exactly what we are buying with that 2%. And by the way, interesting your point about Churchill. He actually, of course, he went through many different phases, Churchill, in his life. But in 1908, I seem to remember, he was in favour of cutting defence spending when he was going around on with Lloyd George campaigning on social affairs, and so indeed in 1922 when he was in the 1920 in the 20s when he was Chancellor, he was accused later on by his enemies of having been a great cutter of defence expenditure, and there was a certain amount of truth in that. So Winston Churchill himself, actually, paradoxically, although he was a great remilitarizer in the 30s and in the run-up to the war, he had a very mixed record on defence expenditure per se.
But in our current climate, with the situation with Russia, if we're not committing to our our NATO goal of spending 2% of our GDP on it? I mean, do you think at this particular moment in the world, I appreciate that people are looking at getting a leaner defence force, special forces, cyber warfare, etc. I'm not saying that you should have an arbitrary figure on it, but if people are threatening to resign because of it, people who've had actually military experience, and we're not. No,
I understand people's concerns about this.
Someone like UKIP are offering, for me, it seems a bit odd that the Conservative Party aren't backing our armed forces.
Well, I don't think that's entirely fair. I think the Conservative Party, actually, you can only have the defence budgets we need if you have a strong economy and strong economic growth. And that's what we have produced after a shambles of a Labour government. That is what would be put at risk by going back to Ed Miliband. And actually, the Conservative Party is utterly committed to a strong defence, to standing up to Russian revanchism in Eastern Europe, to the threats in the Russian near abroad and all that. And we totally understand that. We understand the insecurity of the world. All that we're saying is, as we invest in defence, we need to understand exactly what it is that we're going to be getting. Because if you look at British engagements in the last 20 years, and the role of British armed forces in the last 20 years, it's clear that sometimes, Steve, through the errors of the politicians and perhaps also the errors of the very top brass, but not of course of the troops themselves. Sometimes I think it'd be fair to say our armed forces have bitten off more than they can chew. They've been sent to operations that haven't been well thought out, and we really need to think that through.
We'll learn today, I understand from Michael Fallon, that there's going to be a redeployment or a review of the defence of the Falklands. This is a suggestion that in some way they might be securing aircraft. Argentina might be securing aircraft from Russia. How concerned should we be about defending?
I think you could never take these things for granted. There's always a risk of some sort of populist insanity in some part of the world, and certainly, Argentina had a history of doing this in the past. It'd be completely unwise. I can't believe they would want to do that again, but you can't take any chances. And certainly the worst part, remember when the original Falklands crisis broke, it was because we'd sent out those signals of a lack of willingness to support and to defend. So I think what Michael Fallon is doing is absolutely right. You a stitch in time saves 9. Just, show the commitment, show the strength now, and that'll pay off.
And a Conservative Party, or indeed government under your leadership, would you lock in that 2% spending, as is the NATO guideline?
As I say, I think you need to be very clear.
So it's how you spend it, not what you spend.
It's what you...
You would not lock it in.
It's what you're... I'm personally committed to David Cameron's suggestion at the Cardiff NATO summit of a 2% guideline, 2% spending. I think that's right. That's right for this country, I think. But as a condition of that, we should be understanding from the armed forces, from the brass hats, what are we getting? How does it work? What can we really deliver for that? Because I think, with great respect to our generals in the last, and indeed to the MOD in the last 20 or 30 years, I think Britain has sometimes been greatly overstretched, and that's led to some engagements that haven't been totally happy or successful. Bob in Guildford.
Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, good morning. Good morning, Nick and Mr. Mayor. Good morning to you. Mr. Mayor, as there are now over 1,400 less police officers in the Met Police since you became Mayor in 2010, there's an increased terrorism...
Actually, I became Mayor in 2008, Bob.
Yes, but since 2010, sorry, that figure is what I'm talking about. And a
right.
further
Well, okay. Well, that's okay. Well, the relevant figure is 2008, actually. But anyway, never mind.
Okay, and a further £800 million of austerity cuts to get to hit policing in London. And according to David Cameron, obviously you're likely Prime Minister in waiting. As a PM now, what would you do for policing? And would this include restricting police bail to 28 days, given that some forensics generally take at least 5 weeks for results?
Well, what I do for policing is I would continue with the programme that we have, which is to support frontline policing in any way possible. And actually, if you look at what's happened in the Met since I've been mayor, it is unlike virtually any police force in the country in that we've kept numbers high. You look at the numbers in London are about to hit 32,000 again. They go up and down, Bob, as everybody understands.
That's what they were under Ken Livingstone.
And it's astounding, if you look at police forces around the country, it is astounding that we've got them at that level now when there has been such substantial cuts to police budgets everywhere. Now, we've done that by fighting for police funding in London, but also by getting support for the front line. We've got 2,600, Bob, more out in the neighbourhood teams, and that is absolutely critical. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating, Bob. If you look at, what matters is not what you're spending on policing, though that is obviously important. What matters is what's happening to crime. The key 7 neighbourhood crimes that we set out to bring down by 20% in 2012, we have now achieved, and we're down. I think crime has come down by about overall by about 20%. Since, or sort of about 16.8% overall, but 20% in those key crime types since 2012. And those are the crimes that particularly affect people.
Quick response
Burglary.
from Bob. Let's get Bob back into it. But Bob.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Mayor, I hear what you say, but I think there's a feeling perhaps amongst some members of the public that they simply don't see the numbers of police on the streets, and that's been put out by the media recently. There's yet to be and a further £800 million was cut. What would you, if you were PM today, would you see that through? And do you agree with Theresa May on the 28 days of bail?
Well,
would you see it through? Yes or no?
Sorry, see what through?
The
Bob?
cuts.
No, what we're doing is fighting.
No, Bob said the additional cuts, the £600 million worth of cuts.
No, yeah, I don't accept. I don't, Bob. I don't accept that figure, and I think that what you need to do is continue.
Where do you get this figure from, Bob?
Because I think Bob's being reasonable because what Bernard Hogan-Howe has said is that, and if we go on as we are, the police will have to make further serious cuts in their budgets. Now, I think that yes, it is true that more savings can be found, but I also think, and here I think probably I would agree with Bob, that London's particular needs must be recognised by the Treasury and by the Home Office. Now, we have a vast and growing population. I've put in the budgets to keep police numbers high. We've seen massive falls in crime. I want to protect that and protract that. So, Bob, if you're asking me, would I want to take huge sums out of policing in such a way as to mean that more police come off the street, then the answer is no.
OK, Bob, thank you. Just a couple of email questions and a couple of questions from me. Has James Landale asked to get into your kitchen yet?
No. He has not. But I have a high regard for James. He's a very good journalist.
Well, presumably you were all at school together, weren't you? The whole pack of you.
Yeah, good.
If he asks to come in your kitchen, will you let him into your kitchen?
That is what you call a hypothetical. Nobody is asked to come into my kitchen.
Can I come into your kitchen, please?
My dear fellow.
And interview you while I chop up the carrots for your children's supper.
I think I would, I think I would have to consult higher powers on that. Higher powers.
Would you ever let a journalist into your...
I have no authorisation. I cannot give clearance for that.
That goes to another power.
That has to go to the Politburo.
Okay.
That has to go to the...
How many kitchens do you have?
For heaven's sake, why are you asking me this question about kitchens?
How many kitchens do you have?
Far fewer than Ed Miliband. Far fewer.
I'm thinking one.
But I am the pro. Unlike Ed Miliband, I am pro kitchen. I pursue policies that actually help people to get their own kitchens. Unlike Ed Miliband, who wants to hit people in London, as we've been describing earlier on, who through no fault of their own are living in a house whose kitchen has increased in value. And secondly, I want to help people onto. Wait. This is incredibly important. Because and one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is all the help that we're giving to people to rent their homes and to part by part rent their homes. We've got a massive expansion now of the London rental standard. We're helping people with deposits for rent, because many people are renting, but we're also helping people to part by part rent their homes. Londoners want to share in the value of their home if they possibly can. 40,000 we've done already under the First Step scheme. And I can tell you today that we are now building, this year we will build more affordable homes in London than any year since 1980. Any year since 1980.
How many will it be?
It will be a huge number.
Well, what's a huge number?
Well, we will deliver. I can get you the figures later on, but
no, I'd like the figure now. You've just lauded it and trumpeted it and said what a marvellous figure it is.
Huge.
And the figure is.
I think it's something like 17 or 18,000.
17 or 18,000.
Affordable.
Yes,
affordable.
Okay,
but I may be wrong. How can you
possibly trumpet a figure you don't know?
But that'd be ridiculous. I'm just telling you.
What is the figure?
I've given you the.
It is 18,000.
It's something like that, and I think I'm going to be corrected if I'm wrong. But I think it's something like that, and that's a fantastic.
So
by the way, and over this, we've already built I can certainly tell you that we've already built about 85,000 just in this mayoralty so far. We will easily accomplish the 100,000. That is far more than was achieved by the previous Labour administration. And my ambition, and I'm pro kitchen because I want Londoners to be able to have the chance of living in their own home, and that is what we are doing.
Marvellous.
One per home.
Unlike David Cameron, then you would not invite a journalist into your kitchen. It would appear. Would you?
Well, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. All I said was that was not a decision for me.
As Conservative leader, would you duck TV debates, in the same way that
David Cameron is doing the debates now, and the scaredy cat Labour people wouldn't do the thing that he wanted to do. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was he wanted. Actually, I think they are now going to do it, aren't they? Is it the thing with 7 people?
Yes.
Well, they find so cowardly custard Miliband.
But he won't do.
Finally consented to debate with the politician in the.
He won't do a mano a mano with Ed Miliband.
Well, that's for a very good reason, because there are many other parties presenting themselves for election, and we have a system now.
We've only got a minute left.
We've got a system now in Britain where there are other parties who have broken through the numbers.
All right, okay. Should Jeremy Clarkson be fired?
No, I am instinctively pro Clarkson, basically because he's one of those guys who somehow fuels lefty indignation, whatever he says or does. So I have an automatic presumption of innocence in this case.
So it's okay to punch a colleague.
Well, that needs to be, as they say, bottomed out.
Lastly, and this is from Ian in Bedfont, and this is in the light of a story that apparently you've asked a fellow Conservative politician to stand in for you at a debate in Uxbridge, a hustings debate. You've asked Pearl Lewis, who's a neighbouring potential candidate, a potential MP, to attend instead.
When is this thing?
Well, that's what I haven't got. The story's of the 15th of March. We'll get that for you. But
I think there was a debate that was scheduled for I think the 19th, which was
and Pearl Lewis attended.
And the trouble was it was people's question time, and there was absolutely no power on earth. As far as I can remember, there was a clash, but it was on.
Right. Ian in Bedfont asks, how does Boris's standing in Uxbridge square with his wish to close Heathrow Airport, a major employer in the area? Does he wish the Kensington and Chelsea seat to become available to him instead?
No, I think I'm fighting Uxbridge, and I'm campaigning for Uxbridge on the issues that matter to people, which is the long-term economic plan that we've got to deliver more jobs, and to protect places like Uxbridge from environmental destruction.
Yes, but you want to close Heathrow.
No, not necessarily. I think there could be all sorts of futures for Heathrow. What I don't want And what I think the Labour Party, what the Labour Party need to become clean about is: do they want a third runway, a fourth runway? Do they want the environmental destruction? Do they want the noise pollution?
You're standing in an area where you want to close the major employer.
Do they want Do they want the vehicular pollution?
Mr. Mayor,
that is involved?
Where will these people work who live in Uxbridge, who currently work at Heathrow? If everything gets moved to Boris Island or wherever it goes, where will they work?
Look, I think the question people have to answer is: what is the ultimate solution for our aviation capacity problems in the UK?
Yeah, okay.
And
come back to the people of Uxbridge. I'm very worried about the people of Uxbridge.
Well,
I'm very concerned.
And not as concerned as I am.
Well, okay, great. Where are they going to work?
And one of the issues, it's a very difficult problem. One of the issues is if you continue with the expansion of Heathrow, you will see environmental devastation across London in the form of...
You'll see employment devastation if you close it. They won't have any jobs.
Well, you
say
you'll see another 320,000...
They'd rather have a field than a job,
You'll see another 320,000 people affected by noise pollution serious noise pollution in our city. You'll see West London choked with traffic.
You'll see people in Uxbridge and their children in employment.
Under any circumstances, even if we were to go ahead with a plan to build another airport, which, by the way, I think we should. I don't. That would not affect anybody currently working at Heathrow. So it's a complete phantasm. And the issue is, what do you do about the third runway and the fourth runway? And I have to say that the overwhelming majority of the residents of Hillingdon, the overwhelming majority of people I talk to in West London, of course they're concerned about jobs, and I understand exactly the point that you make, but they also are alarmed about the idea of the environmental devastation that will follow from a third runway, and indeed a fourth runway, which is on the agenda.
We must close, and good luck with being the leader of the Conservative Party.
Well, good luck to you, Nick. I'm sure that your chances are as good as mine.
I somehow doubt that. I've not been named by the Prime Minister in the same way that you have. I am done.
How do you know you've not been named?
Well, I didn't come out with Theresa May, George Osborne and Boris Johnson. I didn't hear the name Nick Ferrari. I don't know that you did. I am done for another day and another fantastic episode or edition, whatever it might be, of Ask Boris with London Mayor Boris Johnson here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow. News is next. Stay safe.
This is LBC. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
With Hampton by Hilton. A great value stay with hot breakfast and Wi-Fi included.
A platinum diamond ring catches the light at every opportunity. But placed on the finger of the woman you love, it shimmers like never before. It's these small finishing touches that make a huge difference.